A new report is shedding light on the mental health issues facing young men in this country. It shows half of Canadian males under 30 are at risk of so-called problem anger. That's anger that interferes with daily life, relationships, or work. Kenton Boston is the president and CEO of the Canadian Men's Health Foundation. He joins me now. Kenton, good morning. So glad that you could join us today.
Good morning.
First of all, I want to get your reaction to this. This is a really high number of men feeling angry and that it is interfering with pretty much every aspect of their lives.
To be honest, it's startling but not shocking. We had data that we released in the springtime that showed 1 in 2 men are socially isolated. There are a lot of reasons why. The things that everyone is impacted, the economy, jobs, affordability when it comes to housing. And there's also the switch that's happened in society about masculinity and the negative conversations that are often associated with that now, and that all combines to put pressure on young men in particular.
Right, and I'm assuming that would involve interpersonal relationships. What's the difference, Kenton, between being violent and violent impulses? This is something that came up in the study results.
So there's the pontification, the thought of doing something negative, which is the one part of that conversation. The other part is acting on it. And to be clear, if you listen to, radio reports, it's a thing for some people still, radio and traffic, there's often incidents of anger depending on where you are in the country. And so it's not that it's also pervasive as entirely negative. There are bubbling things that we're trying to get out in front of people. Incidents of where your fuse is shorter than it normally is. Those are the real signs about things to be challenged and look into to make sure that there is support to help that, to alleviate that angst and anger.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. Men who are feeling angry, what are their options in dealing with that emotion?
So first and foremost, and we had a campaign in the summertime called You're Not Alone. And that's about understanding that while many of us, there's a stigma and there's hesitancy to go to see clinicians or doctors for your mental health in particular. And so we're really getting behind this idea of talking to a friend, family members, this idea that you're not alone, that what you are going through is something that all of us can understand and appreciate. And we're asking for, it's really a community effort to make sure young men in particular are heard, seen, and listened to, that they're not chastised or put aside, that they're brought in. They just want a conversation to be part of the conversation. And if you looked at what happened in the US with the election and Donald Trump, and the target audience was younger men often, and they just want to be heard and seen. And that's what we're really trying to promote, this sense of community with parents, friends, and family in particular.
Yeah, he really tapped into that. Do you think that being a young man, 19 to 29, is harder now than it was, say, 20, 30, 40 years ago?
I think one of the driving forces is social media. If you look at the proclivity of people on the right political spectrum, the manosphere conversation, there's a whole industry tied to supporting Google and, tech companies about fostering that anger, that sense of, I'm right, I have the best philosophy. And what it doesn't do is build that sense of community. It's taking us away from who we are as individuals. And that's the need to communicate in person. And I think that's the fundamental shift that's happening right before our eyes. And it's up to all of us to come together to give that support that maybe you're not getting in the digital space.
And Kenton, one final point then, as you're talking, I'm thinking, it's interesting that we're talking about anger, not depression. Are the two connected? Is there a connection between them?
Yeah, our study didn't go to the connection, but the study that I referenced earlier in the springtime showed anxiety and depression rising for young men, and also gay and bisexual men and racialized Canadians. And so that was our first kind of warning sign, and this is the follow-up to see the impact. So there are huge needs for all of us to come together, the medical community, clinicians, and most importantly, family and friends, to make sure we're in this together and remind each other that we can do this together, being the part together.
Kenton Boston is the president and CEO of the Canadian Men's Health Foundation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Marcia.